Hey, welcome back to Barefoot Bible's Judges series. I'm your host, David Wright. We continue today with the mystery of who wrote Judges, and we'll be covering verses 27-29 of chapter 1. In Judges, the writer did not provide his name, but several verses give us clues, and one of them is in this section. So join us today to unpack this mystery. Verse 27-28. However, Manasseh did not drive out the inhabitants of Bethshean and its villages, or Taanach and its villages, or the inhabitants of Dor and its villages, or the inhabitants of Ibleam and its villages, or this one you've heard of, the inhabitants of Megiddo and its villages. For the Canaanites were determined to dwell in that land. It came to pass when Israel was strong that they put the Canaanites under tribute, but did not completely drive them out. So the Jewish inhabitants of Manasseh regarded the Canaanites as a labor force and decided to exact tribute from them, reminiscent of how their ancestors actually served the Egyptians for 400 years. Their disobedience was driven by a desire for wealth and material gain, and by imposing tribute on them, the Israelites formed a league or covenant with the Canaanites. And you can look at Judges 2 and verse 2, where they are confronted about that by God. It directly contravenes the Torah's clear command found in Exodus 22:32, thou shalt make no covenant with them, nor with their gods. Pretty clear. And that's a photo of Beth Shean there at the bottom, and it's archaeologists are studying the area. Verse 29, nor did Ephraim drive out the Canaanites who dwelt in Gezer, or Gezer. I think it's Gezer. So the Canaanites dwelt in Gezer among them. And again, that's a picture of Tel Gezer as well. So Ephraim's failure to conquer Gezer exemplifies a recurring pattern already. This verse offers us a hint about the author of Judges. And, in verse 1:1 of Judges opens with the death of Joshua, but it really lacks a greeting or an identification of who the writer might be. So who wrote Judges remains uncertain. However, clues in scriptures hint at the time of its composition and help us infer who the writer may very well be. We're just drawing some conclusions. We can't be dogmatic about this. First of all, the Jebusites in Jerusalem, according to chapter 1, verse 21, demonstrates that Judges was written before King David had conquered the city of Jerusalem, and that happened in 1004 BC. So it's written before King David's day. Secondly, the Canaanites residing with Ephraim and Gezer, verse 29, and the repeated references in chapter 17, 18, 19 to the fact that there was no king in Israel during these days. Both of those strongly suggest that the prophet Samuel, who anointed King Saul and King David, also served as the author of the book of Judges. Now, and then thirdly, the third bullet point there, the Jewish background, and we're relying upon Dr. Fruchtenbaum for his explanation of rabbinic tradition, and that comes from his commentary on Judges and Ruth. And so I'm quoting him, quote, in rabbinic tradition, the Talmudic tractate, and I don't know how you pronounce this, Baba Bathra, 14b to 15a, states that Samuel wrote the book that bears his name. So that in our Bibles, it would be 1st and 2nd Samuel, and also the book of Judges and Ruth, unquote. So that we are going to gather up this background here and then move forward with a conclusion. Given support for Samuel, we should consider Samuel's perspective as a writer of this book, and his intended audience were the Jews who witnessed Saul and David being anointed by Samuel as their kings. And that gives us some guidance, because we want to seek, when we're interpreting, we want to stay true to the author's intent and true to the reader's understanding of the writer's message. Now, next week, we will continue our study in Judges with compromise in Canaan, and we'll cover verses 30 through 36 and endeavor to explain and unpack those. Every believer must understand the principles discussed in next week's vlog. It's really critical. Ignoring historic biblical truth can leave America and other nations open for damage, and we need to learn the lesson and not repeat mistakes others have made. So look forward to that. Thanks for joining us this week in our Judges series, and I look forward to next week and hope you will come back and visit with us once again for Compromise in Canaan.